Joe Biden spoke for an hour and 20 minutes during last night's town hall on CNN. The president bumbled through a wide range of issues, from the economy to COVID-19, proving once again that he is one of the least impressive men to have ever held the office of the presidency. We'll take a look at what Biden had to say, the mumbles, the stumbles, and everything in between in tonight's Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. Whenever Joe Biden gets up to speak, it is something of an extreme sport. It's like watching a slow-moving train wreck. You can't turn away, but you don't know what's going to happen, but you know it's probably going to get messy at some point. There was plenty of that last night, but let's focus in on the policy, because taking cheap shots at a guy who, honestly, it's remarkable that he was ever a senator, although he was a senator from Delaware, so I guess there wasn't a huge line of people trying to get that job. Here we are now seeing that Joe Biden, as president of the United States, doesn't really have a whole lot of vision for the country. 7 months into his presidency, give or take, and here we are with a guy who can't point to a whole lot of victories. And the one thing that he would have said until now they're doing a great job with is taking us out of COVID, right? He inherited a vaccination program from Trump, Operation Warp Speed. But somehow we're actually not getting out of things. In fact, with the Delta variant and all the fear the media and the Democrats are building up around it, there's the possibility of a return of mask mandates. Here's Biden telling you, if you're under 12, or rather, for your kids who are under 12, mask up.
Everyone under the age of 12 should probably be wearing a mask in school. That's probably what's going to happen. Secondly, those over the age of 12 who are able to get vaccinated, if you're vaccinated, you shouldn't wear a mask. If you aren't vaccinated, you should be wearing a mask.
Oh, okay. So under the age of 12, because you're not getting vaccinated, it means you got to mask up. That means kids in schools, the federal government now speaking through Biden, are saying that they need to mask up, right? That's what needs to happen. I thought we were told that once we had enough adults vaccinated, we'd be close enough to herd immunity that we could just go back to our lives. But doesn't it feel like a bit of a bait and switch? Doesn't it feel like we've been told all along things would get better if only, and then we made a concession, and then it turned out that when we reached that phase, not enough. They wanted to go back, or they wanted to double down. They wanted to find some other reason for not allowing us to have back our basic freedoms. Joe Biden, though, wants you to know that he's going to restore confidence in government. That's what he's with. This guy, I mean, I'm not confident that he's able to get through an entire town hall without his brain turning to scrambled eggs for a minute or two. But he wants you to know that he's really confident when it comes to government, that he'll restore it, and that that's where all this vaccine hesitation comes from. Here's what he said.
One of the things I said when I ran for office, it's not Democrat, Republican again, is you got to restore faith in government. You got to get people to the point where they trust government. And I made a commitment that when I made a mistake, I'd tell you. And I've made mistakes. And when I think I got it right, I'll say it. But I'll take responsibility for what I do and say. Part of it is just generally, no, I don't mean that. Part of it is generally raising confidence in elected officials. Raising confidence.
You know what didn't raise confidence, specifically when it comes to vaccines? When Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, during their campaign to defeat Donald Trump in 2020, were willing to say repeatedly that they're not sure they could trust vaccines that Donald Trump's FDA approved. Can't trust a Trump vaccine, as if he was sitting in Mar-a-Lago with a bunch of Bunsen burners trying to figure out how to cure the COVID. Give me a break. They would say whatever they wanted at that point in time, as long as it gave them political advantage. So on COVID, the story from Biden right now is constantly changing, and it's hard to make it look all that positive from the Democrat decision-making perspective. Overall, pandemic's basically over. So we're at the place where we thought we'd be, but they haven't milked every bit of political advantage out of it yet, so they're still going back and forth. And then there's the economy. Another situation where we're basically where we thought we'd be, except a little worse, because it turns out paying people to stay home and spending trillions of dollars and having a huge tax hike on the horizon, inflation rising. These are not good things. But Biden wants you to believe, based on the town hall last night, that you can't believe your lying eyes. The economy's great. Shut up, peasant. Spend those dollars. Here's what he says.
The economy is picking up significantly. It's rational when you think about it. The cost of an automobile is kind of back to what it was before the pandemic. We compare what the prices were for the last year in the pandemic, and they are up. They're up because, in fact, there was not much call for. For example, automobiles. You know, you had the rental car companies selling off their entire stock. You found yourself in the same way with automobile dealers. And all of a sudden now it's coming back. We're going to grow at 7% as expected. We created more jobs in the first 6 months of our administration than any time in American history. No administration's ever created as many jobs.
Oh, it's the best economic. What is he even saying? Does it matter? At any moment in time, you feel like he could just blurt something out, and the media would all sit and they would clap. Oh, look at Joe. At least he's not Trump. That's all that matters to them. Where are the other areas of weakness for which Joe Biden had no particular explanation of how he's going to make things better? He doesn't even have a connection to the reality of how they're bad right now. Well, the border certainly comes to mind. You know, we've been talking about it frequently here on the show. We went down to the border. We have a border special that we show you on occasion just to update everybody on what's happening in the general macro sense. He's trying to tell us that, don't worry, we've got this. We're sending more resources to allow the people entering illegally to game the system and stay forever so they can get amnesty. Here's what he said.
Vice President Harris said to Guatemalans, "Don't come." Recently, you have indicated you are in favor of refugees coming to this country. Could you please explain your administration's basic stance on immigration?
Yes, they should not come. What we're trying to set up is in the countries like in particular the Northern Triangle, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, etc. We are setting up in those countries, if you seek asylum in the United States, you can seek it from the country.
That's called a refugee. It's not called asylum. Does Biden even know the difference? Asylum is when you show up and say, you must take me, I'm fleeing persecution, and you're already in the country you're requesting it from. Request, remember, can't demand it. Refugee is when you apply from another country to come into, say, the United States because of that persecution. The problem we have, my friends, is that people from all over the world just want to skip the immigration line, so they enter illegally, pretend they're asylees, and then either get lost in the system or just never show up for their hearings. Couldn't be any easier. Joe Biden has no answer for that. He has no answer for a lot of things. Gun violence, for example. What does he plan to do about that? Here's what he says.
How will you address gun violence from a federal point of view to actually bring about change and make our local cities safer?
Now, I'm not being a wise guy. There's no reason you should. Have you seen my gun violence legislation I've introduced? As you know, because you're so involved, actually crime is down. Gun violence and murder rates are up. Guns. I'm the only guy that ever got passed legislation when I was a senator to make sure we eliminated assault weapons. The idea you need a weapon that can have the ability to fire 20, 30, 40, 50, 120 shots from that weapon, whether it's a 9mm pistol or whether it's a rifle, is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. 400 bullets, a bazooka machine pistol. What is he even talking about? Assault rifles are used in less than 2% of homicides in the country. It's not like that's going to actually bring down the massive spike in the murder rate in the last year. But he's an unserious person with unserious talking points. And that was what you really saw last night on CNN. So at least they let us see that. Coming up in a moment, we've got more on that town hall with the First TV Zone, Jesse Kelly. Oh boy. But first, I want to tell you about the newest sponsor on Hold the Line, My Digital Money. Everybody wants to invest in cryptocurrencies, but it's not that easy to get started. That's why Colin Plume, the CEO of Noble Gold, decided to create My Digital Money. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with concierge-level customer service. It's one of the few U.S.-based cryptocurrency companies that will answer your phone call and help you get started. And because your comfort and security is their absolute top priority, they offer an unparalleled military-grade security for your coins, a trigger order to help you secure opportunities for gains or limit your losses without having to watch your account 24/7, play money accounts you can test the market without risking your money, and with the recent pullback of most of the major cryptocurrencies, this might be the best time to get into this exciting technology-based investment. When it comes to your money, you deserve a team of dedicated professionals that have your back, speak to you honestly, and treat you like a human, not just a number. Check them out at mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com. We'll be right back.
And the question is whether or not we should be in a position where you why can't the experts say we know that this virus is in fact it's going to be, or excuse me, we know why all the drugs approved are not temporarily approved but permanently approved. Yeah.
Right. President Biden once again failing to impress during his town hall at CNN last night. More on this one. Let me bring in my buddy, the host of I'm Right with Jesse Kelly, right here on the First TV, on right after this show. Jesse Kelly. Jesse, that was one of the ultimate Biden moments, I mean, right? What do you say about it?
Well, all right, I've watched it 10 times and I'm still laughing. I know that's not nice because clearly it's not, whatever's happening up there is not working. So I know that's bad for me to laugh like I do, but I can't help it. That's one. Two, I actually do think that stuff is a bigger deal than we Americans actually think. And this is what I mean by that. Buck, you cover politics for a living. I mean, hours a day you talk politics. You have like the biggest radio show in America. You probably don't know the voice of a single other world leader. And if you do, you know maybe one or two. Everybody watches when the president speaks, but because we don't watch anyone else, we don't think about that. When Joe Biden can't talk, it's really important. I mean, we don't do this with them, but China, everyone in China last night, they were sitting down watching CNN. They were watching the president unable to complete a sentence. And what are they thinking, Buck? They're thinking it's open season.
It was not an impressive showing when he talked about inflation in particular. If we want to get into the policy side of it, let's just remind everybody that, inflation's going down because Biden's just going to say it a bunch of times.
Look, here's the deal. Moody's today, when a Wall Street firm, not some liberal think tank, said if we pass the other two things I'm trying to get done, we will in fact reduce inflation. Reduce inflation. Reduce inflation. Because they're going to be providing good opportunities and jobs for people who in fact are going to be reinvesting that money back in all the things we're talking about. Driving down prices, not raising prices.
Reduce. It was a little bit like a CD that was skipping there for a second, but also put aside that for a moment. No, spending a lot more government money is not going to reduce inflation.
It's one of the things that's damaging this country beyond repair, Buck, because now, I mean, the media has always been biased and politicians have always told fibs. I mean, that's just the way of it. But now, when you get to where we are now, where they control every single cultural pillar, they control every cultural institution, they even have the military now, they have the churches, for Pete's sake. What happens is now they can invent lies out of nothing. Joe Biden could get up on stage tonight and basically do exactly what he did last night right there and say the sky is green. And you and I would laugh and we'd go on our shows and we'd mock him. We'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm looking at it. The sky is blue. But you can get away with it now because no one else will check him on it. It can't be checked. It is the most insane, illogical thing in the world to say we're going to blow $4 trillion on roads and bridges, and that's going to reduce inflation. That's opposite of everything that could possibly be true. That's defying gravity is what it is. And he gets away with it. And he gets away with it now because we lost all of our cultural institutions. It is bad. It's why they got away with Russian collusion. It's why they got away with impeaching the president twice over nothing. It's why they got away after St. George Floyd died with classifying all cops as a bunch of racist monsters. They can just invent things out of nothing, not even partial truths, invent them out of nothing and get away with it now.
What exactly do you think if we're looking right now, we've had Biden having trouble verbalizing, I'm having trouble verbalizing. What exactly do you make of these so-called journalistic institutions? I mean, they get things wrong. I'm at the point now where I think not only do they not care when they get things wrong as long as it goes to the narrative, they take some sort of glee in saying things that are untrue as long as it, it's like the Kavanaugh effect, right? Like they enjoy just making stuff up about their enemies. Doesn't matter that it's not true. Or they enjoy making stuff up about issues. I mean, I'll just give you an example. Here's Don Lemon, not exactly a scholar of anything, but he's on TV. They pay him millions of dollars. Dumb people think he's kind of smart, I guess. Here's what he says about the filibuster.
If you agree with the former president, he is called your as you call him, your old boss, that it is a relic of Jim Crow.
It is.
If it's a relic of Jim Crow, it's been used to fight against civil rights legislation historically. Why protect it?
There's no reason to protect it other than you're going to throw the entire Congress into chaos and nothing will get done.
All right.
Nothing at all will get done. And there's a lot at stake. The most important one is the right to vote. That's the single most important one. And your vote counted, and counted by someone who honestly counts it.
The Jim Crow part, I mean, that's as wrong gets. And the filibuster really actually was used as a tactic from the very origins of the American Senate. There were senators complaining about it in the early 1790s. And it was used in the 1830s, the 1840s. That's when the term actually comes from. It's borrowed from filibustero in the Spanish and vrijbuiter in the Dutch. Basically a pirate, one who takes over the Senate. Jesse, just a lie. But Obama said it. So when Obama lies and then Don Lemon gets to repeat it on stage, Joe Biden just nods and goes, yeah, it's a Jim Crow relic.
Well, it's what we were just talking about, Buck. They can get away with it. That's the amazing thing. It's not that they lie. I mean, for one, Joe Biden's going to lie because Joe Biden is a half-functional adult. I'm not even trying to be mean. He is. He's a half-functional adult. He has a bunch of communists around him. They're telling him what to say. So that's why Joe Biden's going to lie. Don Lemon's going to lie because Don Lemon's an idiot. He is possibly the least talented human being to have his own TV show. I'm not even trying to be mean. I mean, I understand. I can acknowledge Rachel Maddow was talented. I don't watch her show, but she's talented. Don Lemon has no talent. Don Lemon has no intellect. Don Lemon should be managing a library somewhere in Sheboygan. But Don Lemon has a television show. So he has no option but to lie either. And this is what they do. They tell these lies because that's either they're full-blown communists or they're too dumb to put them down. And so we have a society now, I mean, it wouldn't matter if half the country didn't believe it. We have a society where half the people in the country believe the outright lies they're told time after time after time. Half this country still believes Donald Trump was a Russian agent. You can't continue on that way.
I know. We got to have you back to talk about that national divorce that you've been warning about for a while, really. Yeah. Jesse Kelly, everybody stick around right here because Jesse Kelly's show is on next because this is the best TV lineup anywhere. Boom. I'm sorry. Bill O'Reilly is up next. Jesse Kelly's on after Bill O'Reilly, which I obviously know because this is the greatest TV lineup anywhere. Jesse, good to see
you. Thanks, boss.
Good to see you. As the BLM movement continues to focus its attention on police, violent crime continues to plague major cities around the country. Not everyone's staying silent about it. We come back, we'll speak to Kevin McGarry, president of Every Black Life Matters, about his efforts to curb crime in America's urban centers. But before that, let's talk about my friends at Black Rifle Coffee. If you're anything like me, you have to start your day with a healthy dose of caffeine. And that means kicking off my morning with Black Rifle. Not only is this some of the best coffee I've ever tasted, it's a veteran-owned company that serves premium coffee to people who love America. Black Rifle Coffee is committed to supporting veteran law enforcement and first responder causes. This summer, Black Rifle invites you to enjoy your coffee, not just the great taste, but the places you drink it, the passion and adventure it fuels and inspires, and the entertainment that Black Rifle serves up along the way. Whether you're brewing the perfect cup of pour-over or cracking a can of 300 on your next mission, Black Rifle is here to fuel your way wherever the summer takes you. Black Rifle Coffee imports its high-quality beans from all over the world and roasts them 5 days a week in facilities right here in the United States. The team at Black Rifle is researching and experimenting all the time with new roasting methods and coffee origins, and they've got great gear, too. Go purchase today at blackriflecoffee.com/buck. Use code BUCK at checkout for 20% off your purchase and your first coffee club order. Fuel your summer with America's coffee, Black Rifle Coffee. We'll be right back.
Crime is down. Gun violence and murder rates are up. Guns.
President Biden at CNN's town hall last night falsely claiming that crime in the country is down. Guess what, folks? It's not. It's actually going way up. In Portland, homicides are up 533%. In Minneapolis, they're up 50%, 35% in Philadelphia. 24% in Los Angeles. What group is this surge in crime taking a toll on? Well, America's youth. Look at these numbers. There have been more than 200 Chicago youths shot this year alone, 26 fatally. In Philadelphia, more than 120 shot, 21 of them dead. In New York City, 82 shootings, 22 of them killed. So where's the outrage? Where's the leadership on what to do about this? Here with reaction is Kevin McGarry, president of Every Black Life Matters. Kevin, great to have you on.
It's a pleasure to be here, Buck. Thank you for having me.
What do you think about when you hear Joe Biden at a town hall presented to the whole country? This is the president. He's supposed to be speaking the truth. Good old Joe, Amtrak Joe, telling it like it is. And he says, well, crime's way down.
Well, I think that he's a great prevaricator. Quite honestly, I think that the people who wrote his card, because, quite honestly, if we're going to be sincere with ourselves and not, kid ourselves, Joe is not really there. I mean, he's reading off his cards. And I think the people who are writing his cards are kidding themselves and are trying to kid us. The reality is crime is not way down, and especially in our highly populated or highly urbanized areas. We are under attack. We have a huge amount of crimes being precipitated in our urban areas. The fact is that there was a big movement last summer to defund the police. We had Biden and Harris, before they were installed, they were on the stump saying that they were going to defund the police. We also had a number of other progressives and leftists and Democrats who were saying the same thing. And then we had a lot of Democrat mayors who were saying the same thing, and they have done it.
Can we actually? I want to ask you about those Democrat mayors, if I can. There are mayors of these big cities who have significantly increased their personal security, but they've defunded the police who are protecting everyday folks, the citizens, residents of their cities. I mean, you can see here. Here's a list of them: Democratic mayors who have defunded police but have private security for themselves and their families. Lori Lightfoot of Chicago, Brandon Scott of Baltimore, Todd Gloria of San Diego, London Breed, San Francisco, Bill de Blasio of NYC. De Blasio, arguably the worst mayor in America today, maybe in all of American history. But I just want to know, what do you make of that? I mean, cops for me, but not for thee, it sounds like.
Well, and this should show us that these people are not dumb. They know that their policies are wholly destructive. These people could say all they want about Black Lives Mattering, but in reality, they know that their policies are destructive, and especially destructive to Black lives. There is no sincere concern about Black lives when they know that these policies encourage additional Black lives, and especially Black unprotected lives, toddlers, children being caught in crossfires are the ones that are going to be the ones that are completely unprotected when you have gang members that have beef against each other, going at each other, and we have so many children being caught in the crossfires. This is not a secret. This has been happening for years. Every summer, it's predictable. In Chicago, it's been happening for decades. Every single summer, we have innocent children that are being snuffed out, that are being killed, mercilessly harmed as a result of gang violence. And so these mayors knew it would happen, and they're not dumb. So what did they do? They immediately said, we're going to defund the police, but they immediately went to their personal security detail and they doubled, tripled the amount of their details and said, we're going to go ahead and spend the money here for our personal security detail, but we are going to defund. We're going to take, those dollars off of our city police officers in that way.
One thing, Kevin, that often comes up is the Democrats, the left, will say all conservatives do is complain about crime and say that police are the answer, and they don't give more specifics. Now, I mean, defund police, I would argue and have argued, is the dumbest political slogan perhaps of my lifetime, and that's what the Democrats embraced a year ago. But let's look at the positive, or let's look at solution-minded approaches to this. What could be done, let's say between now and the end of the year, to bring down that violence curve that has been going up in American city after American city for the last 18 months or so?
That's a great question. In my opinion, what we should first do is reprioritize police work, reprioritize law enforcement. Number one, what we need to do is reinvoke our bail system. A lot of these cities also took bail off the table, which means that even if you do a violent crime in these major cities, there's no consequence. And a lot of these criminals know, even if I do a violent crime, I'll be out this afternoon. It's no problem. So I could shoot somebody, there's no bail, so I'll be out, no problem. So even if they're caught, that's what's happening. Number two, we need law enforcement levels to be high enough to where when we do have these violent instances occurring, that there's law enforcement close enough to where we can actually catch these bad guys in the act. A lot of these instances, that 10, 15, 20 minutes will go by and before a law enforcement officer is even near in the area. And that's because the law enforcement levels of law enforcement have gone down so much due to retirement, due to people leaving the force altogether, that there's not enough police officers to actually police the entire city in a lot of these major cities anymore. So therefore, the level of law enforcement has gone down significantly. So we have to improve there. Number three, we have to reprioritize. Like we would have officers on bikes. We would have, like policing within these localized neighborhoods. But majorly important from an administrative perspective, we must, if Biden and Harris are absolutely sincere, which they try to tell us that they must have a policy statement, and it is very, very easy for them to do. And this is one for them to do. If you're sincere about Black lives, Mr. Biden, if you're sincere about Black lives, Ms. Harris, this is what you do to make the statement. You say, look, we know that our borders are open and not secure at the moment. What we're going to do, because we know right now we have human traffickers coming through, we have drug traffickers coming through. What we're going to do to show the American people our sincerity, that these Black lives are being snuffed out, that these children are being caught in the crossfires and their lives are being killed, or are being snuffed out as well. What we're going to do is we're going to secure our borders. We're going to stop the drug smugglers from the drug and human traffickers from bringing the guns over, because we have guns coming over. When they're smuggling humans, when they're smuggling drugs, they're also smuggling guns and vests. They're smuggling also all of these heavy armory. And so what's happening is in the streets, these criminals are getting hold of these illegal firearms. These are not guns that they purchase at gun shows, or
yeah, of course.
That they, so that's what's happening. Is a lot of these criminals are purchasing these illegal firearms coming over via the black market, coming over our open borders. What we must do, if we're sincere about doing something about these illegal shootings, is stop the guns coming over the border. So they have to secure the border. If they do nothing about securing the border, they're insincere.
Kevin, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. We'll leave it there. Have you back soon.
All right. Thank you, bud. Pleasure to be here.
Coming up, a major story that hasn't been getting enough attention. Shocking images of riots and looting in South Africa as that nation appears to be tearing itself apart at the seams. We'll have more on that with South African journalist Ryan Milan after the break. But first, I want to take a moment to talk to you about my friends at Done For You Real Estate. If you've ever thought about investing in real estate, I want you to take me up on this recommendation right now. Visit doneforyoubuck.com, where you can learn more about my friends at Done For You Real Estate. If you haven't checked them out yet, let me make this easy for you. These guys have found a way to make real estate investing straightforward, and their system flat out works. I know because I'm using it successfully. It allows everyday, hard-working Americans like you and me to finally own investment real estate without all the risk and difficulty of doing it on your own. I can't tell you in strong enough terms during the 60-second commercial how important it is you check these guys out. So how about this? If you visit doneforyoubuck.com, at the top of the page is a podcast interview I did with Done For You Real Estate, where you can hear my personal experience with their company in my own words. I'll tell you about it in detail, from picking the city to the house, getting the broker, the loan, even getting a tenant in place so that I get free cash flow coming to me every month. Visit doneforyoubuck.com, listen to the podcast interview, and give my friends a chance to show you what they can do for you at Done For You Real Estate. We'll be right back with more. Hold the line. There's been a huge surge in political violence in South Africa, looting, rioting, demonstrations. The death toll is now well over 200. This lawlessness is a legitimate threat to the country's already fragile political and economic system. Life doesn't seem to be getting much better anytime soon. In a New York Post column, South African journalist Rian Malan sheds light on the deteriorating situation, writing, "Hundreds of thousands face hunger thanks to the destruction of warehouses. Tens of thousands of jobs and small businesses have been destroyed. Former President Jacob Zuma's refusal to be held accountable for corruption triggered this mayhem. Rather than face the prospect of imprisonment and disgrace, he seems to have attempted a preemptive coup against his successor. This was an especially bitter experience for young black people, 63% of whom are now jobless, too broke even for booze and drugs to dull the pain." Joining me now from South Africa is the author of this article, Rian Malan. Rian, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So you're down there, you're a journalist, you're covering South Africa, writing about it. Just tell everybody, because the American press seems much less interested in this for reasons that we can get into that I think they should be or would be if they were just looking for news stories. What's happened in South Africa in the last couple of weeks?
Well, it's kind of odd. I lived in America in the 1980s during apartheid, and whenever there was violence in South Africa, we dominated the front page of the New York Times and CNN. I gather that this is not an event that Americans are very eager to look at because maybe it evokes something bad for them. But anyway, in the course of last week, South Africans were treated to the hallucinatory spectacle of thousands of people converging on giant shopping malls and warehouses to loot, and cars backing up on the freeways for 5 miles, waiting to pull in and load loot, and interestingly, not a single policeman in sight quite often, which is a question that this week has come to preoccupy us. Exactly where, I see there's a policeman on your video there, but generally the police were conspicuous by their absence. And the question was
that police officer, by the way, Rian, is not doing anything. He's watching people loot. So, even when they're there, apparently not a lot going on.
Not a lot. That's a sort of unhinging thing. So the discussion this week in South Africa is, what was the nature of this plot and what was its intent? Is it just a failure of intelligence? Were the police unprepared, or were certain police generals perhaps part of a plot to overthrow or at least undermine our new state president, Cyril Ramaphosa? Those questions that we're wrestling with now.
So what sparked all this, though? I mean, the images that people who have paid attention to this story see, it's staggering how much theft there was, destruction, a couple of hundred people killed, and what brought all of this about? Why did this happen?
Well, the death toll is now over 300. Well, listen, the proximate cause was this attempt by our former president, Jacob Zuma, to escape accountability for allegations of corruption going back 15 years now. He was imprisoned the week before that on a contempt of court charge, and his faction in the ANC threatened retribution. They said they were going to tear the country apart. And much to our surprise, they managed, at least in one province, or 2 provinces of South Africa, to come pretty close to achieving that. There are parts of South Africa, in President Zuma's home province, more than half of the towns, the rural towns, have had their shopping centers destroyed completely. It's been gutted and looted, and nothing survives. That's the proximate cause. Is this faction fighting within the ANC?
Well, what's the long term? What's the long term cause? It sounds like you feel like this has been building for a long time and has reached this. It's finally boiled over, so to speak, but it wasn't something that just all happened in a flash.
Well, listen, I'd say South Africa and America, the United States, are very disparate countries, but we have something in common. It's an idea. It's this idea of equity, of equality that was born in the Enlightenment, and it goes like this: that in an ideal society, because all humans are born equally gifted, all our human outcomes should be identical. And if they aren't, in America, say, if there's an income disparity between black and white people, the only conceivable explanation for that must be racism. That this is taken for granted. It's CRT theory pundits like the world famous Ibrahim Kendi would say that there's no need for further discussion. The only possible explanation for inequality in America is racist policies. If you ask him what policies, he's very reluctant to be drawn, because The fact is there aren't any policies to cite, not in your country. I mean, the discriminatory legislation has been outlawed for 60, 70, 80 years. But it remains an article of faith for CRT people. And in South Africa, starting around we were supposed to have a socialist revolution, but instead we took cues from America. And in 1999, our government began to enact a series of equity laws, sounding American in some ways. We had the Employment Equity Act, we had affirmative action, we had some things, all sorts of restrictions, shall we say, placed on the operations of business. There were racial quotas to be met. There were all owners of corporations were expected to give chunks of their equity to black partners who often brought nothing to the table except black skin. And these gradually began to sort of strangle, if you will, South African business. It's like growth ceased, and growth slowed down, eventually ceased entirely. And we began to experience an economic crisis where instead of that these equity laws were achieving the opposite of what was intended. And one of the reasons for this was that in terms of CRT...
Wait, I want to jump in for 1 second here because we have a quote from your article, Rian. You wrote, because you're really writing this as a warning to Americans, what's going on in South Africa. You're saying you see some of these themes and threads playing out in the U.S. context as well when we're discussing equity. You wrote in your piece, and you're very critical of Ibram X. Kendi, who's very much associated in the current discourse here with CRT, but you wrote, conversely, any situation in which disparity survives is in itself proof of injustice, according to Kendi and others. This is the line promoted by CRT pundit Ibram X. Kendi, who blames all racial disparities on racist policies. And then you write that Kendi must insist that an invisible miasma of systemic racism infects white people, propels them to act in ways so subtly racist, most of them aren't even aware they're sick until it is pointed out to them by diversity consultants. That is what's going on here, by the way.
Yes, I follow American politics closely. Well, good luck to you guys. Yes, I think what happened in South Africa is to an extent a warning. It's going to sound like a digression, but I'd like to say something about China. The most important thing that's happened in my life was the rise of China, that went from being a pathetic and miserable communist hellhole in 40 years to being a global superpower. And what are the values that enable the Chinese to do this? It was like there was diligence, hard work, the work ethic, and above all, meritocracy. Meritocracy being an idea that's going to lead to inequality. People who work hard and who try hard and others are going to come out ahead in the game. These are terms that, as I understand the CRT debate in America, you're not allowed to discuss them. You can't discuss the work ethic because it's in and of itself, it's deemed to be racist. That you're making excuses for it and trying to justify the continued existence of inequality. We've had the same sort of thing in South Africa. And for me, at any rate, the great underlying problem is that equity, all blacks have to bring to the situation is their blackness and their victimhood. Nothing is asked of them in return. There's no call for honor and dignity and like sort of working hard. Let me cite you two South Africans examples.
Rian, we've got to go in a second, so I need you to give me just kind of the précis here. We got to go in a minute. Go ahead.
Sorry, man, I'm still inarticulate. In South Africa, we've got a giant civil service that is very well paid. Salaries are higher than they are in the private sector, but at the same time, most municipalities in South Africa are dysfunctional. There are potholes in the road. There's raw sewage running down the streets, and the people who are affected by this are predominantly black, and we have a black government, but this government doesn't want to get stuff. It doesn't want the exact excellence from its own people. Instead, this just general people shrug and sort of turn away. It's led to a situation where in South Africa, which was like once famous for apartheid, the world's great empire of white ethnocentricity, in the beginning of this year.
Wait, Reed, I'm sorry. We got it. Thank you so much for joining us. We got to leave it there now because we got to go to a commercial break. But I appreciate you being with us. We'll have you back to talk more about this, especially as it plays out. Thank you for your article, and thank you for being with us.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Biden speaks to a half-empty room at CNN's town hall last night, and Australia's health officer tells citizens not to talk to each other, even with masks on. We'll have those stories and more coming up in Quick Hits. But first, I want to tell you about my friends at Oxford Gold Group. We're living in very uncertain times, as you know, and you got to be prepared for the unknown now more than ever. I'm sure you've seen the world we live in today is anything but predictable. The government is passing massive spending bills. The Federal Reserve is printing trillions of dollars in fiat currency. and many experts are predicting inflation could run rampant in the coming months. That could spell disaster for the dollars in your bank account. We could all benefit from something a little more reliable right about now. What could be more reliable than real gold and silver? I'm talking about real gold and silver that you can actually hold right in your hands. Call the Oxford Gold Group now. Learn how easy it is to get real gold and silver sent securely directly to your home, or how you can have real gold and silver placed in your IRA or 401k. Just call the Oxford Gold Group at 833-600-GOLD and ask for your free guide on owning gold and silver. Again, call the Oxford Gold Group right now, 833-600-GOLD. The Oxford Gold Group is the only gold company I trust. Call them right now, 833-600-GOLD. One more time, that's 833-600-GOLD. Quick hits up next. Eric Clapton claps back at COVID guidelines, and Australia doesn't want to have you loving your neighbor. Those stories on tonight's Quick Hits. Let's get into it. Let's start with Australia. This is a place that we had often been told in the earlier stages of the pandemic, they got it right. Never mind the fact that they're an island and that they have a very limited population, a very small population density compared to a lot of other countries like Western European nations, the United States, and they also did full-on lockdown, stay-at-home orders for weeks on end. They're still doing that stuff. They're still going at it, and they don't want you going at it with your neighbors, not even talking to them. Here's an Australian health officer telling the Aussies, don't even talk to your neighbor.
It is in human nature to engage in conversation with others, to be friendly. Unfortunately, this is not the time to do that. So even if you run into your next door neighbour in the shopping centre, in the Coles, whilst you're at Coles or Woolworths or Aldi or any other grocery shop, don't start up a conversation. Now is the time for minimising your interactions with others. Even if you've got a mask, do not think that affords total protection.
Don't talk to your neighbour. Yeah, don't speak to them. That's what they're telling you. Don't. I think that that's pretty weird, but then again, I'm not from the land down under, so what can I tell you? It's a bad situation there with government having the ability to tell you that you can't leave your house. You can't even speak to people if you see them near your house. But there are other people out there who seem like they still care about freedom, democracy, the world being a place where there's still some hope for liberty. Eric Clapton, he said, unless there's a provision made for all people to attend his concerts, he reserves the right to cancel the show. I've been a rebel all my life against tyranny and arrogant authority, which is what we have right now. He says you cannot have vaccine mandates at an Eric Clapton show. If there's a vaccine mandate for people, they have to get vaccinated or else they can't go. He's like, I'm not going. I think this is great. If we had more people in positions of power and authority, such as it is for a aging rock musician, who said they wouldn't go along with this kind of tyrannical nonsense, it would all probably go away pretty soon. But instead, we have a lot of people acting like sheep and just doing what they're either told or what they've been brainwashed to believe. And that means that all this COVID madness will continue much longer than it should. And then there's speaking of COVID, the hero of the pandemic for anybody with a brain is Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, who kept Florida open and fought against all the pressure, the pandemic panic. Turns out that there's a Democrat running against DeSantis who's just straight up saying it, that DeSantis has Fox News, but we have everyone else. Florida will be blue in 2022. This is Nikki Fried. No, not going to happen. We got to keep Florida red. We got to keep DeSantis in place. And before we go, one more shout out to my good friends at My Digital Money. Everybody wants to invest in cryptocurrency, but it's not that easy to get your start, right? That's why Colin Plume, who started Noble Gold, decided to create My Digital Money. It's an easy-to-use self-trading crypto IRA platform with customer service that will blow your mind. It's one of the few US-based cryptocurrency companies that'll actually answer your phone calls and get you all set up. Because your comfort and security is their top priority, they offer a bunch of things like an unparalleled military-grade security for your coins, trigger orders to help you secure opportunities for gains or limit losses, and you don't have to watch your account all the time, a play money account so you can actually test the market without risking real dollars. And with the recent pullback of most of the major cryptocurrencies, this might be the best time to get into this exciting technology-based investment. When it comes to your money, you deserve a team of dedicated professionals that have your back, speak to you honestly, and treat you like a human, not just a number. Check them out at mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com. And that's it for tonight's Hold the Line. Bill O'Reilly, the No Spin News, is up next. Jesse Kelly's up after that. Shields high.